Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is Advancing Towards Winged Civilizations and Rage of the Deserving. And a quick announcement, I will be on Discord after this. The Discord link is found for the patrons in the Patreon community. To begin, there is something in this world. I mean, that's too general. Let's begin specifically. There was a person named Kardashev, and there's something called the Kardashev scale. And I have, of course, my own models. In other talks, I've spoken about how I see civilization advancing through the notion of civilization 2.0, a winged civilization, where the first phase. I mean, of course, I'm not I'm not going to explain civilization 2.0 too much here, but pretty much in the Kardashev scale, there's three types of civilization. And we have a type of civilization. These civilizations are based on how they're using the energy of their environment. You know, people are thinking what to do with their lives. People are thinking of the levels of their existence and experience, and it's really individual now. That means, believe it or not, back in the day, because technology wouldn't occupy the individual's life, it was more collective. You know, I think the more we go in the past, the more human beings depended on the human experience, you know. So, guys, if you look at the wallpaper, this episode might be a it may be a little rough, but hang in there, folks. It's an important episode. So, in the Kardashev scale, you see a type 1, which is planetary, a civilization that harnesses the energy, all the energy that falls on their planet from their parent star. So what does that mean? That means right now, if we could somehow use all the energy of our planet, if we found a way, you know, that would be a type 1. Right now, we are like, what is it? We are 3/4 of the way towards a type 1 planetary civilization, you know, a type 1 civilization. But then we have a type 2 civilization that harnesses the total energy radiated by their parent star. That means, can you imagine us finding a way to control our sun and then using that to control everything in the solar system, you know? Because right now, honestly, if you think about a human initiative to populate the cosmos, let's say we're a type 1 civilization, a civilization that's done with playing with the earth. Now we want to play with the solar system, we want to play with the sun, and let's say we use the sun as a broadcasting tool. I mean, the sun is, the light beams are going everywhere. Imagine a type 2 civilization that has such a passion, such a comprehension of the sun that we've actually used it. We've kind of use light as a geometrical carrier system of information. So that means, imagine the sun is sharing the possibility of, is a geometrical activation of the possibility of intelligence in particles that are already dormant in planet that have the potential of it. This is, of course, more closer to what I see personally. Type 3 is a civilization that harnesses the energy at the scale of their entire host galaxy. So this one is a bit more difficult. But really, it wouldn't be us. A Type 3 civilization would most likely, AI will be doing most of the things, we'll be just going in. So in my own work, in the visions of Mr.Within Civilization 2.0, there will come a point where we will complete the human game. And when we complete the human game, I feel there will no longer be a separation between man and movement. We will have dissolved back into complete movement. We will go beyond the language threshold at some point. The species will make that leap. Right now, we are experiencing the precision of our individualism. Right now, we're in a world where the individual is the most important thing. People are trying to be individuals, and at most, the individual decides to participate in something that seems to be a more of a, let's say, part of a bigger individual. Do you know? That means right now there's so many institutions, so many types of people, and language has in some sense plagued our lives. In not in you can say good ways and bad ways. You know, like you need language to be able to communicate with someone, but when you think about your meaning in a world so vast, the language is just a limitation. The language is just how the attention has found a way to move. You see, this picture I've chosen, there was something about it. There was something that if I was back in the day, I don't know, sometimes in my, I feel, sometimes there's emotions where I feel if I was back in the day, I mean, this is a sci-fi kind of image. They have helmets on with glass. But the winged hussars of the, I believe they were the Polish military. This image has inspirations from the Polish military. And the thing is that there was a sense of allegiance. These human beings were doing things that little did they know robots would do. Now a lot of military investment is going on to technology. You know, technology has added a dimension to our lives where the need of the human being and the activity of humanhood has become less and less. Do you know what that means? Is we are getting more used to a civilization of robots that are all perfect, correct, you know, and all the time, you know, a normality that is blind. Let me tell you, there will come a time in every human being's life where they will realize how they see the world is how they see the world. And then the rage of what your mind truly deserves arises. Do you know? That means honestly, like it's strange. I was raised in like with a sort of background where there was religion at a young age around me, you know. Then I began it's literally like a kitten with, like, imagine you hold the back of a kitten and you throw the kitten somewhere else, you know. So it was similarly like there was a huge cultural shift early on in my life. And then I began to see both sides. You know, imagine you have seen the chaos of ideology and now you have seen the order of ideology, yet the progress of ideology seems to be limited to as far as you are an experiencer in this realm. And so based on my background, it was strange because there's many moments in my inner realms where I feel as if there was a king and queen to the realm. To the realm, it would be a pillar of the social archetype of honor. You know, they said this, that the political leaders of nations, they influence the psychology of the youngest kid being raised in that nation. Do you know? So that means even though we don't have kings and queens like back in the day, now kings and queens are like commodities on the shelf. You know, symbols on the shelf, you know, of our history books. But I'll tell you, it's like there was a time where the significance of the advancement of the individual was a significance in every person's life. Do you know? That means you could imagine a sort of anarchist chaos from a sort of barbarian horde towards the civility of an empire, regardless of its corruption. That means when I think about political systems, is it better to have 100 pure anarchy, or is it better to at least have some political system? Do you know what I mean? That means it's like a political system is better than no political system, but do we have the best kind of political system now? No. Do you see? So it becomes a situation where you work with what you have. And honestly, it's we used to be people. I mean, you think about history, people who they would manage to put down their ego at the sight of the progress of the collective ego. Do you know? But if you can't put down your ego for the advancement of the collective ego, then you are not living as a collective. Do you see? And I'll tell you something. I mean, the way these guys are dressed, even though the winged hussars, let me see. Let me brush up here on my... Yeah, the Polish hussars. The Polish hussars or winged hussars were one of the main types of Polish cavalry in Poland and in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth between the 16th and 18th century. And you got to know something, guys. There was something about just like the way they're dressed. It was like Roman military was so advanced that I don't know how to tell you. There was like when you look at Roman military, it was they were attacked and invaded, and they paid off this invasion. Then they realized their military was weak, and they incredibly advanced it. But it was a sort of Machiavellian discipline. So back in the day, you could say people had more of a savage selfishness. So there required to be a sense of fear in organization. That means, believe it or not, the fear of losing your job is what makes you take your job seriously, believe it or not. But it's not what makes you enjoy your job, you know. So you could totally see that soldiers back in the Roman military, they were given like 25. If you served 25 years as a soldier, you would become a citizen. When you became a citizen, then you could own land. Do you know? So you could say a lot of there was a strange fear okay, so here's what happens. It's all about technology and warfare. That means there was a time where it was just based on numbers, you know. Then it became based on weapons, you know. And as weapon technology evolved, military tactics changed and shift. Now in 2020, it's ridiculous to me when militaries invest so much on their like weaponry, not realizing it's a cyberspace age now. Do you know? So now it's becoming a totally different kind of battlefield of movement, where it's more significant about information moving. Do you know? Rather than just physical things moving. So, anyways, the Romans were invaded. They realized they weren't prepared. They started practicing ridiculous military practice. Do you know? And their shields were designed to be more curved. Their armor, their helmets were improved. Their tactics were Roman military tactics were insane. Like their tactics were that before they fought, you know, this is actually historic. What they did was they wounded the other opposing army with like a sort of catapult kind of thing. And then their whole military strategy was that their shields, they were pretty much like a tank. Do you know, a human tank? You know, but but it was discipline that led to the height of the empire. The more disciplined the empire and the more decent, the more ethical, the more it lasted. You know, the least ethical, the more dominant. I mean, you could totally think about it. A person who wants to rule the world, they suddenly become enemies with the whole world. Do you see what I mean? That means empires that expanded beyond their limits were also invading. So I can't tell you, like, even though I speak about the glories of different movements, historic movements, but it was also savageness. You know, it's like it took us a while to realize that we are human. Before we were human, we are ideological bound. You know, we were like, we're from this and from that, as if really everybody is a planetary being. You know, if they ask you where are you from, your answer should be just Earth, or even if you feel even more humble than that, it should be your universal sector. You know, because the moment we choose language to become our face, it is as if we have worn the armor for battle and we're ready to go to war. You know, so right now I would say it's no longer a sort of physical battlefield, it is a psychological battlefield. Now the minds are fighting, our minds are acting like animals in jungles. Before our bodies were, we were physically killing each other. Now we're arguing discourse. It has moved on to a, you know, different caliber of confrontation, where it's like it's no longer fighting with swords. Now it's minds and worldviews colliding. There was this thing they had in military, like in Rome, in regards to discipline, disciplining their soldiers, and it was through they had the crucifixion, by the way, for like those people who would betray, but they would also get them in groups of 10, those people who wouldn't attend to their duty or even would fall asleep on the job, like they were that strict. They would take 10 of these people, they would give 9 of them clubs, and they would make them pull straws, and the person who had the lowest straw in some sense would be by the other 10 clubbed to death. That means if you didn't honor your position and you didn't uphold to the strictness of what the legion wanted, you know, the empire wanted, it would be a situation where you would actually be killed by the betrayers. So it was this ridiculous thing that whoever betrayed the empire would be killed by the people of the empire, technically, had the potential. So there was a fear basis to the discipline that led to an overall advancement. Now, you know, in 2020, of course, we can't implement the same thing. First of all, people are not that disciplined to be like this. I mean, you look at how back in the day people would fight, and now you look at people who fight now, it's just like, you know, it's like linguistic entities trying to act physical. You know, not all, somebody says like 300 in the chat section, I'll tell you, not all parents are throwing their kids outside and being like, when you kill a wolf jumping backwards, you know, then you can, then you're my son. You know, parenting methods have changed since the Spartans, you know. But now we need that same push, just like how the Spartan would push their, like in the movie we see they would push the child into the thing, into a forest, like to go kill the wolf. Now we need to push the mind of human beings into unique individual experiences where they attain their individualism. You know, that means it's like, you know how it is, somebody's like, hey man, you know, don't pay for me, I whatever's for me I do myself. You know, there's some people who are like that, you know, where they're not they want to be responsible for their out expression, you know. So if you're a person who you have this sort of honor of you taking care of you, then it comes to the notion of individualism, where how much of your identity as a human being is really from you, how much of it is because you were young and emotional and you just accepted things. Because I realized this. For example, my grandmother was an extremely religious person. In my youth, me and my brother were around my grandmother, and I remember she would always have like this the Islamic rosary tasbih, they call it, and she would always be praying for me and my brother as we were playing, you know. And so it's like in my youth, I did not get exposed to an Islam of violence or something. I was just in Iran, the type it was, even though there was extreme political issues. I'm telling you, like, here's the thing. Everything, like ink on a page, doesn't have a brain. The human has the brain. The human is connecting the dots. So any behavior from a human is not just the influence of ink on a page. Do you see what I mean? So that's the thing. And so in my youth, I had this, I loved my grandmother. So when you love a person, you also love who they are, correct? And who she was a very religious person. So for me, there was this sort of, like when I would see like religion, I would remember my sweet grandmother. Do you know what I mean? So there was an emotional identification with the ideology, because there was an emotional identification with the love of that moment, with what you cared for in that moment. So you see someone you care for, it doesn't matter. I mean, you could totally see it. It's like, I'll give you an example. Like, I have a twin brother, and my twin brother would get, like, he would get into, like I was more passive and shy. He was a bit more extroverted, and he would get in fights. I would get in fights too, but it would be different, you know. But he would get in fights, but anytime he would get in fights, people knew they were fighting two people. So it didn't matter if my brother was fighting a classmate, someone older. Whenever I would just see things are getting heavy, I would just be there simultaneously, you know? And it would be hilarious because so imagine like your twin brother fighting someone, and you're standing right there. They're arguing, verbally arguing, and you're there watching to make sure, nothing too fucked up happens, And I remember there would be a situation where there was this poor kid named Milad, and of course I think his parents would hit him or something. There was something wrong with this kid, like something like, you know what I mean? Like the whole classroom was like looking at him like, okay, there's something off with this kid, right? But anyways, there was a moment where I remember, this was in Iran, when I was like, what, like 14, 15, something like that. So pretty much the situation would be, my brother would get into a fight with this Milad, and I would be there, and there would be a situation where my my brother would, like, Milad is standing there, so he knows that if he fights my brother, he's going to be fighting two people at the same time. And my brother is arguing them with Milad, and Milad's trying to hold his ground, and they're cursing. My brother and him are cursing at each other, but Milad can't curse at anything that offends me. Right? So my brother is giving, like, bad insults to, like, on, like, you mother, da 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 da, to Milad. Now Milad comes to try to do the same thing, but because I'm standing there, he can't. Do you know? So it was this strange, weird thing where I would have to watch. Later on, I realized I would watch way from the distance, because that way it would be a situation where, like, my brother wouldn't feel complete authorization to, like, curse out Milad. Do you know what I mean? But there were situations where sometimes you can't expect rationality from an irrational environment. And those people telling you to be rational all the time, they haven't understood there's a wilderness and savageness to this world that instantly leaps out of rational expectation. Right? So what does that mean? A fight can break out anytime. In a battlefield, bullets can start being thrown. What does that mean? That means intensity can suddenly arrive regardless of your simple expectation. But the whole point of it was, I mean, I'm going to bring it back towards more of a collective outlook. There's a lot of shenanigans that happens in human living. You know, a lot of it being based on an inability of human beings to notice that they have different inner realms. The cool thing about a picture like this to me, if I was one of those soldiers in the front lines, you know, that means imagine the logos being that winged dude, and every philosopher and scholar and artist and mystic to be one of these soldiers on the front line. What is the whole point of it? We are living in a certain way to get a certain outcome. If we don't see that outcome, why are we living in a certain way? Because people don't have their civilization is not like, hey, human beings, we're going to build an advanced civilization here, help out. Instead, the civilization is just trying to manage, just trying to, help the cows graze. Do you know what I mean? Like, that means we haven't built an honorable civilization. That's why even if we act honorable in the system, we will be inevitably dishonored to step out of the honor, right? So the first effort would be to create a collective global system that we can trust, right? Because that's the whole point. If you can't, if these guys, if the person in the front line can't trust the person in the back line, then what's the point? What's the point of wearing all this armor? You know? And it's also about different things. I mean, after some point in whatever tactic you have, you just have to trust the moment and play the game. A lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people who their past judges them because they haven't understood the future is a game. It's a game where you don't know what happens. You don't know which soccer team wins. You don't know in this world of chaos and order where the attention will go. I don't even know. I'm just this person, like, there's like, what is it? Like 1 billion trillion stars in the universe. And we are speaking as a planet, as a pebble around one of these stars. You know? So to be honest, all civilizations are artistic, all species. Like I can't see, it's all art. That means really if aliens come to make contact with human beings, it's just art showcase. What else could it be? We don't speak the same language. We're gonna be like, we made this. What did you make? And the alien civilization is like, yeah, we made this endless energy pack or something. So if we were to somehow be perceive that, of course, we don't need this kind of military force now. What we need is this kind of similar discipline, but in the linguistic simulation, on a subjective level. You know, that means there's different ways. Either you get rid of the archetype that has a solo desire, or the archetype finds a collective honor. That means this is something where not problems don't have to only be gotten rid of. You can make the problem become part of the solution of another problem. Do you know that means you use problems against one another? What does that mean? That means two people have come to fight you. You may suddenly make those two people fight between themselves, and you slowly get out of the picture. You see what I mean? So you throw the bone. Here's the thing: the more savage a human being, the easier you can throw a bone for them. Do you know? That's why even from like you see in mafia movies, the muscle is paid off. You see, it's like it's thrown the financial bone. Right now, because there is no honor, dishonor is easy to set forth. But I'm telling you, if every human being, every child who was raised, and the child went to their parent and said, "What's the meaning of life, parents? What's the meaning of all this when we're temporary?" And imagine the parents said, it's like you're forgetting, son. The civilization has plans, regardless of what your parents and what you tell yourself. That's the kind of advanced civilization we need. you know, where for the first time the minds are lifting off, you know, from ideological ethnocentric limitations, you know, limited spheres. It's literally, for me, sometimes when I speak to people, I can notice, I can instantly know if the person is in their inner realms or outer realms. Just the way a person speaks, I can know. I can know what is what is more real to them, their inner realms or their outer realms. You know, if a person's inner realms is real, you got to look at how much effort they're putting to come to the outer realm. Do you know what that means? I'll tell you. Like, I was super shy again in my youth, and there was this soccer pitch from this totally different class that was playing football. Do you know? And I remember I did something ridiculous. I was super shy. However, I just went beside and watched the soccer field. I could tell you, like, there was a group of people playing like soccer, you know, and I remember I just went there and watched. I was watching the game for so long where suddenly someone was like, "Hey man, you want to play?" And I was like, "Okay." You know? You know, it was strange. When you care for something, it notices. That's the thing, you know? And that's the difference. That guy who is that logos has only one task. The logos is not meant to be the fight, to be the soldier on the battlefield. You see the winged dude? The logos was the inner guiding voice. It was a term that Heraclitus, this ancient Greek philosopher, came up with, you know? So the logos was the mind of the universal sector at work, right? So you can say the logos, the winged hussar, it is the what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? It is the the command source, the command station. Literally, like you're a pilot, and like um, uh, and the signals you're getting from the main center, you can say. So I would say the mind is not here to move things. The mind is here to instruct. Then it is the free will that moves. That means each of these, so you see soldiers in the front lines, they are minds. Each of them. What does that mean? That means each soldier is a world. There is a scene in, I will tell you, I could tell you this movie is literally like inspired me to even go study film. Like, that's how much I love this movie. But there's a movie called Gladiator. Okay, in it there's a scene. There's a scene where I was like, wow, whoever wrote this script was an expert in human psychology. There's a scene where at the beginning of the movie, Gladiator, I'll share a link afterwards, where he's giving a speech to his cavalrymen. And cavalrymen are those soldiers on the horse, you know? So he's giving a speech and he does something genius. He says, he goes and he tells the soldiers, he says, see yourself, he says, I see myself like harvesting my crops in my field. He says, see yourself, oh man, what's the exact word? He says, oh, it's like every time I remember this now. Now in this live stream, what was the passage? He says something like, I see myself harvesting my crops. See yourself where you want to be, and it shall be so. He says something like this. And then Maximus, first he gives the command, he gives the vision. He says, when you're going in battle, see that where you are after the battle. That means if you're fighting in the battlefield, but seeing yourself harvesting the crops, that means you've seen so many chess moves ahead. Technically, like the will of nature, it takes you to the outcome. Do you know? So that's the first thing Maximus says. The next thing he says is, if you find yourself walking in green fields with the sunlight hitting yourself, don't be afraid, because you're already dead and in Elysium. Then he gets rid of the fear of death. He gives the vision, he gives the hope, then he gets rid of the fear of death. Do you know? He says, so okay, if you find yourself dead, you're dead. Like chill out. You know you're soldiers here. You know, like and then he says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. Literally telling his soldiers, holy shit, now is the event. Literally, like the coach, the football coach, saying now or never. Now is why we are alive. You know, and then they run into battle. You know. You know, literally, he says the most philosophically deep thing known to the human mind. And it's very important why he says that, Maximus. You know why? Because it could be the last moment. He even puts his hand, he goes and touches the dirt. You know, I learned this. Every time I come to give the talk, I just acknowledge the silence, the dirt of language. You know, the dirt that all words go to, all sounds return back to the silence. You know, so Maximus would, in some sense, see the end. Literally, it would be a soul person's humble enough to see that he will return back to the earth. You know. So now, where does the concept of the deserving come? You know, let's say you ask the dictionary, "What do I deserve?" And the dictionary was like, "All right, let me tell you." And the word deserve means do something or have or show qualities worthy of a reaction which rewards or punishes as appropriate. So it has to do with the appropriate karma, you know, what you deserve. Now, how do you know what's appropriate for you? What you move. So you deserve what your free will has literally, as a force, moved towards. I'm telling you. That's where the concept of this be deserving something comes. It's what you have honestly lived for. That's why your mind can accept it. A lot of people have a huge amount of desires, but they're not in the mindsets that they would accept that desire. You know, that means the person says, "I want $1 million," you know. But if they suddenly had $1 million, you know, if they were given $1 million, what would they do with it? It's as if they haven't thought that many chess moves ahead. And I'm telling you, in this life, when you think chess moves ahead, a lot of chess moves ahead, then the easier the previous chess moves become simpler. But it is the case sometimes you think 7 chess moves ahead, but then the person you're, in some sense, the other empire you're facing in chess is also, you can say, like, if they make a move, it may change your whole strategy, you know? Because what is the honor of being human? I'll tell you what honor. Honor is like we're caring for our families, but we're not caring for our grandchildren. So are we really caring for our families? Technically, because we haven't fixed the collective problem, how could parents really love their kids? They love their kids, but they don't love their grandkids. Great grandkids, you know? Because if you did, you would stop seeing, you know what's going on? It's as if we have, you see, we can't let go of tradition that easily. By the way, guys, I want to share something more directly with the viewers. There was an issue with the School of Athens Discord server where I saw it was inefficient, right? But in the Patreon, I went and checked what's the lowest number you can put, and I put it as 111, 111, yeah. So it's like $1.11 a month, you know. And you get access to, what do you call it? Like the Discord, and that way it's in. I would feel like it's in my house, so then I would be much more comfortable sharing with the audience, you know. So that's what's going on with the Discord. Just letting people know if they're like, what's going on. But anyways, I mean, to be honest, it's weight. You can't have that 2 giant wooden wing things on your back and feel like a normal person. You need to have honor at that point. You need to have honor or it's Halloween or something, you know what I mean? Like you gotta own the look or it's done, you know? Or it's not worth looking at, you know? And of course, guys, Russell Crowe's acting was so strange, as if he was acting. It was as if he was literally in his inner realms. He had a time machine, you know? So I thought about it like this. I thought about it, let's say we wanted to make an advanced civilization for a Buddhist. You know, let's say like, you know, I'm talking about an advanced civilization. I'm just thinking in the future, let's say a really, you know, devout Buddhist comes up to me and he's like, all right, so how do we create a civilization for those who want to reincarnate? You know, for those who reincarnate. That means as if somebody's telling me if you were going to reincarnate, what kind of advanced civilization would you make? I, you know, for me, I have seen that the whole issue of every system and every institution, its lack of multidimensional flexibility, which can be the addition of a integrative dimension. That means we might not be able to have all ideological systems care for the same kind of future humanity, but we may be able to create a dimension, a sort of something that all ideological systems can incorporate, you know, that is acceptable by all ideological systems, yet renders them as a collective human effort. That means if I was speaking to, for example, a religious crowd, I would say, let's see what God's greatest creation is. Let us see what an advanced civilization is. If I was speaking to a secular crowd, I would be like, we have ascended from the dirt. Let us now ascend towards the stars, you know? So it would be that kind of situation, right? But ultimately, what you want to see, imagine if 8 billion human beings had jetpacks, these like not fire-based jetpacks. Like you could see 8 billion people with jetpacks, they would just look. I mean, if 8 billion people with jetpacks were in the sky, they would just see an empty civilization. And you would see that you would have to fly down to the civilization. And literally, we're doing the same thing as bees are doing. We don't realize it, but we're just not building a civilization. We're like bees gathering honey, but not using this honey. Sorry, not gathering honey. What am I saying? Pollen. You know, there's some bees going to stores buying honey. What was that? That was like a bee movie or something, you know? So we are kind of like doing the same thing. Instead of pollen, it's information. It's models on reality. That's what it is. Like that's what a belief system is an acceptance of a way of life that is choosing to after that moment be unchanging. Do you know? I Let me tell you something ridiculous. There was a time where I seriously believed in things. Not blindly though, not savagely. But there was a point where I felt reality could not change. Then it changed. I was like, holy shit, reality changed. And then I realized the change was because of the world. But then I realized if my world is changing, how could the self be not changing? How can I believe in a certain sense? In when the person is alone, whenever I find myself in solitude, it's just the battle plan phase. What that means is that I treat my inner realms like the general's tent. That means before I move or before I say anything, there is a calculation of context, maybe not the specific context. What that means is when I come to speak, I know in my inner realms I have geometrically simplified it to landscape. So events. So when I come to give a talk, it's as if like I focus on a couple events that I feel it's going to be the significance of where the language of the talk goes to. And because those events are experiential, I can't forget them, you know? Things that relate to your experience. They say that what enters your long-term memory is that the more abstract it is, the more memorable it is. That means when you attempt the novel, you get introduced to the most extreme of abstraction, of your ability to fathom abstraction. So you can say novelty is experience, is how a deeper life is being lived. That's another way I think we can discuss it. And guys, one more comment. I just noticed something in the chat section. Someone said, guys, the Discord community, the Patreon community is like, I'm treating it like the School of Athens. It's technically a school I'm living in. Do you know? So those who join the Patreon community at any time, any moment, anywhere, you can message me and I'll be instantly accessible there. Do you know? Plus the whole science fiction, I'm starting a library, like a whole bookstore. There will be also like perks for patrons as well. It's all a play. It's all events, energetic events. And it's like the tip of the iceberg is what we see. And the true depths of the iceberg is the seer within. And right now, civilization is so on a surface level and so linguistic based that I'm thinking about, well, like, what's the most advanced thing a human being can do? And it's like antennas receiving new signals and sharing it with the tribe. Aside from that, I don't know what else we can consider to be an advanced human effort. Like when you look at a cup, even regardless of if you see if you attempt a personification of the universe or not, you would see it's as if like it's like you look at a cup and you're like, what's the purpose of an empty cup? And you're like, what's the purpose of an empty universe? And you see, it's that we are an opportunity to fill the void with the meaning of our novel living. Do you know this was what Alan Watts, Terence McKenna, pretty much every mystic who's ever lived and spoken, has been trying to do, to say that there is an experiential viewer of reality. So what is real to you is being observed from an unknown. So technically we are unknown minds living, we are unknown causal minds, and we're seeing that have access to the known objective effect. For me it's like, I wouldn't mind it actually. We start building civilization like a beehive. Why not? Why not? Why not implement a hexagonal pattern and everything? You know? It's like they'd be like, oh my god, this architect loved honey too much. He loved honey so much that, like, it's just honestly, can you think about it? Can you imagine all around the earth, there's these giant, like, buildings, okay? The School of 2.0, School of Athens 2.0 buildings, these giant, like, buildings, you can say. Giant. That means it's literally, they're designed to kind of, like, inspire. Like, imagine cathedral level buildings, Now, imagine you as a person, this was like a hive. It was a hive for your mind. You would enter this kind of community where every bee had come and in their own hexagon there was spheres of debate. Honestly, this isn't a bad idea to design a hexagonal approach to communication within a collective. Now, the whole value of the hexagon is that within it there is triangular realities. Even when you look at a square, even if we could totally see this universe as a sort of square, existence to be a square, and experience to be four triangular phases of the square. That means we could, for example, post this notion that we are one of four parallel dimensions of Earth if it was a square kind of universe. Do you know? Because the whole sort of the triangular hierarchy, it would mean that once the human being let's say Maslow's hierarchy, you saw the Maslow's pyramid in sociology. I mean, I don't want to explain it because it's if you look it up right now, it would be very easy. But Maslow's hierarchy, pretty much, it's saying like a human being emerges after attending to the physiological needs, after attending to the psychological needs, then it comes to a peak point of reaching self-actualization. Now I'm saying if you could see four Maslow's pyramids beside one another making a square, you could say that once you reach the peak of your self-actualization, you have actually seen a self in one dimension, and as you reach the self of the self, which is the point between all the four, the central point in the square where that's divided into with an x in dividing it. So what does that mean? That means upon coming to the source attributeless self, you simultaneously experience parallel selves. So human beings, it's this ridiculous situation where the mind is multidimensional in certain states. So we can go into a state where we identify as energy, and then the ideological suit can be different, you know? So right now we're identifying with the alphabet. But imagine there comes a point where children are like Tai Chi masters and we're like a silent, energetically conscious civilization. Do you know, we have not mastered just the outer realms through technological innovation, but we have also mastered the inner realms in regards to in how many ways the user of technology can use the technology differently. As if like you have one mouth, you can share many kinds of words and worlds of words, you know? You see, here's the thing. There could be this total possibility that because the life is not an separated phenomena, it has to be a collective meaning. This could be that the meaning of life cannot be known until we actually tap into a collective initiative. That means like the most greatest moment in the life of the bird perhaps was when it was flying with all the other birds in unison, you know? And you can see that, of course, this kind of warfare, whenever you see someone holding a weapon, is because there's something to fear. That's the reason. So it was fear strategies. Now we need love strategies. We need literally the same amount of militaristic kind of ingenuity of the commander, but now in regards to a subjective landscape where we have to care for the human mind. What does that mean? That means for the first time, the whole spell and this delusion that intelligence could be measured goes away. And your intelligence is how much you contribute to the effort of civilizations. Because civilizations, they have a life cycle as well. That's why I'm saying Civilization 2.0 is a strategy to bypass extinction indefinitely. Pretty much, I thought about it. I saw the vision in my inner realms, the destiny of the castle in the sky, the archetype that we will reach before the true galactic age. We will have to become sky beings before we become space beings. We have to make our sky our home. Then we are ready to go. beyond the clouds of the language threshold. We need to make a beehive a human hive of information and communication, but real communication. So for us, the pollen is experience. And what we do with our experience suggests the sophistication of intelligence. So intelligence is not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know. Because anybody can hold a tool, but very few people can use the tool. And so when you realize your whole life you have been an experiential accumulation of various ways that phenomena has been informed, you suddenly notice that in your subconscious, your genius is watching you. And that's the logos. Do you see that soldier where the commander is right behind him? That's how the intuition or the logos was to philosophers. Philosophers would go into the school of Athens from different parts of the world, and they would get involved into a discussion of rhetoric. So for them, discourse between two human beings was as profound as an alien stepping onto Earth. It was an event of novel, that had never happened, conversations taking place that had never taken place on the planet before, minds and worldviews colliding, and that's the cool thing. In the inner realms, we don't feel the consequences in the outer. That means a person can close their eyes and imagine what it's like, for example, a nuclear bomb to go off, but it's like nothing happens in the outer realms. Do you see what I mean? So the inner realms is like, again, that extra room. So I have had a relationship experientially with the logos, and what it comes down to is trusting what's the moment you're in. That means all that the commander, all that the soldier, all that every single living being on this battlefield can do is just trust the moment and go forth. That's pretty much life. Now, if you're wise, you care about your civilization's victory, not just your own. If you're foolish, you're caring about your victory, but the civilization is not a fool. The civilization cares about your individual victory. That means, imagine right now the civilization is taking more from people than it's giving them. The way societies and the economical sector has caused civilization's blueprints to be designed. But it's going to become different. It's going to become different in an incredible way, where we realize when robots do all the things that were labor-based, we are left as minds. So imagine in 50 years, you're like, you're going to realize novelty is the secret. Novelty is the greatest work, is the great work. The new, you know? In Civilization 2.0, I had the vision of pretty much we go live in the sky, and then we restore the earth. So pretty much phase one, if I remember correctly, phase one was build sky cities. The sky cities lift up into the air. Phase two is while we're in the air, what do we do in a sky city in the air? We endlessly strategize on the greatest botany effort of trying to, I call phase two Earth Heavena, where we heavenize the earth. We literally are trying to turn the earth as if no human beings were ever on it, and species and plant life is flourishing, you know? So pretty much the idea is I mean, here's the thing. Because technology is taking us to the cyberspace age, we don't need to really live on the Earth if we want to wear virtual reality goggles all day and live a collective cyber mind. Like, if we want that kind of reality, we could totally do that in sky cities. People could just wake up and go into an advanced, comfortable cyberspace reality. And even though we're human beings on Earth, but in cyberspace reality, we're literally um, living with the freedom of gods. So the human being has this special thing that's going to open up to a technology, even though it's going to take certain privileges of nature. It's also going to give some privileges to certain aspects of nature. You know, that means you could, for example, totally see. I mean, this is way too soon. I'll give it maybe 150 years. But maybe, like, for example, in the future, you can see the smokers' affected organs be completely replaced with a very high caliber advanced nanotechnology. Do you know? So literally, imagine there's a nanotechnology that is so smooth and allows for curvature in technological design. So imagine the person has this nanotechnology, like whole changed body part, and the nanotechnology even changes color pigment to look like skin, right? So technically, human beings could endlessly be changing their organs through nanotechnology, you know, these nanotechnology systems, and it's going to become indistinguishable from reality, So there will get a time where I would say it would become I would say hilariously spooky phase of technology, where suddenly becoming machine or being a man is becoming very the same. I mean, they're pretty much, you see, it's like the MA is the same between the word man and machine. Do you know? Or you can see a CHI between the N and the A, you know? So what I'm saying is pretty much it's like today we are man. Tomorrow we might be machine man. I don't know. Or man machine, or man machina or something, you know? So Billy in the chat section says minds are not conquered by force but by love and high-mindedness. Baruch Spinoza. Yeah. Spinoza is also the type of God that Einstein considered. A God that was the collective intelligent value and inconceivable. So Spinoza he found the glitch early. He found the glitch in the ideological systems early. Do you know? Because it will surprise a lot of scientists. For me, it really surprised me. But I realize, like, scientists are even though science is predominantly the focus, sort of materialism is afloat. A mist of materialism is everywhere, a fog of materialism. But the whole point of it is, I would say that the issue is there isn't an honorable a discretion and acknowledgement of each zone of life. What that means is every branch of academia is like a camera lens. And if you don't take care of these camera lenses, it's as if you feel you will never use it. I sometimes feel every ideological system should be at its utmost, because sometimes you can't ask people to change, and there's no need to even sometimes. But sometimes it's that if you want to change something in the outer, then the person changes themselves for it. You know that means if literally there was like let's say a sort of advanced civilization kind of game, where they were like, all right, you do these things, you get an advanced civilization. I would instantly do those things. you know I'm not saying it's like an extraterrestrial where it could be suspicious or whatever. But I'm saying, like, if there was like some hypothetical game that the person was wondering about what it takes to lead to an advanced civilization, Like, honestly, if there were just smart game shows, can you think about that? If there were actually smart game shows, not game shows where the person is stamping themselves as a clown for the rest of their life, you know? So many things can update that after some point you realize you can have endless desires. That means I could totally understand advice to people who have maybe a few desires, people saying, all right, don't have desires. But what if somebody has infinite desires? What do you do when you have infinite desires? I mean, if you think about right now having infinite desires, imagine you had access to the eyes of 8 billion human beings and you had endless desires right now. After some time, you'd be like, which desire should I meet? You would either continue functioning from an individual framework, or you will just become null. You will become everything. So when you are everything, what is there to do when you're being everything? So in the inner realms, there is a mystical confrontation like that, where you're like, okay, who is here? Like, what is here right now? Is this just hallucination of electromagnetic fields? Electrons are hallucinating minds in complex, sophisticated formats? Or are we a mirage in a desert of materialistic nonsense? Literally, the senses have no meaning. They're just an occurrence. I mean, it is super complex. We are like a creature where the inside of the body is living a different life than the outside of the body. You know? And that's the fascinating thing, that there is events going on behind our skin that are different than the events that are going on outside of our skin, right? Different systems of intelligence. I feel that the United Nations, I proposed this idea in other talks. I was like, what if the United Nations, you see all the world leaders that are part of the United Nations, they have accepted at least the civility of the laws of the United Nations being in the building and whatnot, you know? That means they've accepted something. They've agreed to something, whatever nation, or whoever the leader of whatever nation. So now imagine the head of the United Nations came up and said, all right, everybody around the world, we have started working with the most sophisticated web video game developing company. And all the world leaders in the United Nations are like, what? What does this have to do with politics? And they're like, this is preposterous, They're just a waiting video game company. What is this? Are we children? You know? Now check this out. The United Nations is like, we have brought a video game company which has an incredible ability through some next level advanced game engine that they can replicate every country's exact military. And so the United Nations sets forth a law that the world leaders, literally with their exact replica of their military in a cyberspace battlefield, they get to fight. Because every nation leader is acting as commander of chief, right? So if whoever loses in that exact video game replica of the militaries of the nations who had tensions, do you know what I mean? Whoever loses in the cyberspace has to take the more humbler stance in the whole moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, can people see that? How world leaders, they fight, they play video games with exact replicas of their militaries, and the result of that suggests which one has to be more lenient to the other's perspective. This way, it's like if there is human ego, it doesn't lead to massive war. Do you know the World War? Oh my God, World War One and Two, 85 million people died. 85 million. Do you know what I mean? 85 million people died. 85. How many of them do you feel they were philosophers? They were artists. They were doctors. They were engineers. And you know, it could be something like this, where the United Nations could come to all the world leaders. It's like, all right, how much do you desire to invest in your military? The guy's like, trillions of dollars. You know, then the other person, trillions of dollars. Hypothetically, we even make those trillions of dollars military budgets real in the cyberspace. Do you know? I'm just telling you, because war is a game. Leo Tolstoy, this Russian philosopher, his whole life's work was trying to shout this out to history. Do you know? That it was like in the Russo-Japanese wars, the Russian, what do you call it? The Russian Tsar and the Japanese leader, both of them were looking at their soldiers. It's like, yeah, the universe is with us. God is with us. You know, fight for our glory. Yet it's just random people killing each other and dying for the egos of men. So that we have to literally, the ego is like a child with a dangerous item in its hand, and we have to detach the dangerous item from the child's hand. So that cyberspace video game thing for the United Nations could be a sort of seeing war before war. It would be like seeing the consequences of war before actual war. Because the whole point of the simulation theory, even, which Elon Musk says there's 1 in a billionth chance, so there's hope, guys. But 1 in a billionth chance that a civilization reached a technology that allowed itself to create a simulation of reality inseparable from reality, indistinguishable. So when you think about like the first video game like Pong, then the video games now, and the video games in the future, they're all becoming more real. Even films are becoming more 3D. Do you see what I mean? It's like this romance of nature and machine. Do you know? It's not enough to live like an animal anymore, because we are totally noticing we have minds. Like, it's, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore that there is intelligent activity, and intelligence is based on how something animates. So literally, if you were an animator and you were animating a character, you know, digitally, like on the computer, it would be a situation where you are creating every part of that, and you're drawing, and after filling an outline, you're drawing it in. And that's kind of seems like what the mind is doing. It's like outlining the future, and the direct present moment goes to color it in, right? So we're experientially coloring in our own ideological projections on in our inner realms and subjective realms of the world. Do you know? So we're pretty much creating the puppet, and we're creating masks. The future is like a mask, and then we try to somehow put our face onto that mask. Now, wisdom says, don't see a mask to the future. Just watch the moment. You're a natural being. Don't have some strange ideological tactic. Just being simple. Because the simple, you eventually get to a point where you can accept. Like, a person may not be able to accept, for example, a giant gift, but they may be able to accept a small gift. You know. Sometimes gifts are internal, you know, because when you realize, there was this quote, everybody's fighting a battle you cannot see. That means whenever you're with people, it's literally, you're just looking, when I look at people, I'm like, how much are they aware um, that others are have their own battles? And how much does the person just want to see their own suffering, you know? Because that's something else. The Buddhic mind, at least in my view, was an elevation from the individual hell to the individual heaven, the individual conscious heaven. But now the individual conscious heaven is where you notice the collective hell. The individual heaven, when you reach the self-enlightenment, then you realize the world's suffering. And because your attention is inseparable from the world, you suddenly realize the game was never for a person. to just feel good. You know, enlightenment wasn't about just a person. It becomes incredibly impersonal after some point. So I have an incredibly impersonal relationship with an advanced. So after, from the individual heaven, you notice the collective hell. You could totally see even like billionaires all around the world engaged in philanthropy and charity work and whatnot, right? So after, then, here's the thing. Because the collective hell is there, you cannot feel like an individual. Your heaven feels incomplete. From the do you see? So from self, that notion of self-enlightenment, you're only left with collective enlightenment. And collective enlightenment is birds flying together with the rhythm, pretty much. It's just trying to re-evoke the spirit of human honor that we thought we lost, but we just forgot. And the things you forget, you can instantly remember. You know? There's the story, I heard this when I was very young. I think my grandmother said it, my mother or something. When it was like a bedtime story, you could say, you know. And the story was that it was from some Persian thing. I think some Persian poet had written it or something. And in the poem it was like back in the day, right, where it was simple villages, and there was this father who came home, and he had like this fat son, you know, and this fat lazy son that the whole day was just sitting and eating. Eating was like the work the son would do, and the father comes in the house and sees his fat son eating corn, and he's like, "What is this? What kind of human being am I raising?" And he looks at the kid and he's like, "From now on, you have to go work, and every day you gotta show me what you made, and you gotta throw those coins in my palm. Do you understand, kid? You know, you gotta show me you're working, kid. You know." And the kid's just chewing corn, you know, like oblivious that there's a world outside of his desire, you know? So what happens is the father comes home and the mother's like, "Oh man, this fat kid," you know? The mother's like, "Oh, my sweet fat kid," you know, the father's gonna scream, you know, the mother is trying to shield the kid's heart. The father is trying to, like, you know, develop the son's brain. You know what I mean? Like the son's mind, the intensity, you know. That's why I feel the traditional, like, father mother kind of relationship worked, you know. The traditional marriage kind of structure worked because it was like two basic archetypes. Now there could be more, you know. Nowadays it could be complete divisions where it would be like the child is being raised with four major parental archetypes or something. It could be something like that too, but eventually it's like, anyways, you can say because of the information age, even if a person tries too much parenting, because information is accessible in all kinds of ways, it's just like the best thing is to develop your child's character. Then their free will chooses what they do, what information they go to, you know. But so anyways, this fat kid, the mother gives the fat kid coins, so when the father comes, the father doesn't shout at the fat kid, you know. And this kid, the father comes late at night, you know, the father's worked, and he comes and he says, I mean, he's beside the fireplace, and he's like, "Son!" You know, and the son comes, you know, the son he's so fat, he just rolls like a Oompa Loompa kind of Willy Wonka style. Like a giant spear rolling in the living room. No, I'm joking. The fat kid comes, you know, the fat son. And the father says, "What did you make today, son?" And the son just takes out the coins, and his mouth is full of food or something. He's not even talking to the father. You know, he just takes the coins, and his oily, greasy hands just, his hands like drop the coins in the father's hand, right? And the father is like, "Oh, like, Jesus Christ, this kid didn't work here. This kid hasn't understood what it means to work, you know." And the father throws the coins into the fire, you know, in the fireplace, and the kid just watches. Just oblivious, just watches as if like he's just watching something that he can't relate to. His inner realms can't relate to. And so the father's like, what is this? Go work, kid. God damn it. And he looks at the mother. He's like, stop helping this kid. What? It's like, why are you feeding him so much? It's like, where? And the mother's like, don't be intense with the kid. Let the kid be free. And the father's like, this is not freedom. This is misery for the kid. So the mother stops giving coins to the kid. Now what happens? The kid is literally forced out of the house. The father literally kicks the kid out of the house, and then the father goes to work and the kid's just outside of the house. And the mother's not allowed to like help the kid, escape this hardship that needs to be a part of his evolutionary psychology, So what happens is that this fat kid, he's just like it's so early in the day, his hands even haven't had the time to touch food yet, and he's just walking. He's walking outside, and he goes for this walk. And in this village, the village they were in, and he sees there's this guy who's legit one man building a house. Like back in the day, people were like, yeah, I'm gonna build a house like today. That's all I'm gonna do, And so this kid's walking by, and this guy on top of this wall, he shouts to the kid, hey kid, throw me a brick. And there's a brick down there, and the kid gets the brick and throws it at the guy, and because the kid's like ate so much corn, like he's good at like he has good reflexes. So he throws these bricks, and the whole day, and the kid suddenly starts getting tired. Never in his life, in his fat life, has he experienced this intensity, right? So now he uses both hands and he's throwing the bricks. Now it's becoming literally like a workout. But because back in the day there was no idea of like getting tired or something, because the kid doesn't have even the notion of what it means to get tired, really getting tired from work. The kid just is like the whole day he's doing this. He's sweating nonstop as if like, it's like that show, Weight Watchers or something. And like the next level workout, he's legit helping. After all, he fixed the wall, he goes and helps the guy with some carpentry and something. And at the end of the day, both of them, they've built like, like 2/3 of a house, and they're tired. They're just sitting there, just exhausted. And the guy gets a bunch of coins and he throws it for the kid, and he's like, you're cool, come back here the next day. Like it's like literally gives the kid a job, right? And this kid goes, and as he's walking home with the coins, he's holding the coins in his hand. He's literally feeling something he's deserved, He's worked for, literally. And he's going home, and he puts the coins in his pocket, and he has this hypersensitivity to something precious in his pocket, as people do. Well, I don't know, maybe pants didn't have pockets back then. Whatever, he goes, all right? The coins are in his pockets, and he goes, and he realizes he gets home, and he's not hungry. For the first time, like a whole day he's worked, and he's not even hungry, but he's super energized, And he stays there at home, and he just comes home, and like after a couple hours, the father comes home. The father, says, fat kid, come here. And the kid just stands up, and he's just, for the first time, he's actually noticing, fat kid? Who's this fat kid? Like he's becoming conscious of the language, And he still gets up, because he's worked. He has an experience that is literally his soul's knowing, And the father's like, what did you make? And he very honorably, very like dismissive of what the ignorance of the version of him that the father sees that is not him, and he throws the coins in the hand of the father, and the father suddenly gets the coins. First thing he notices, they're not greasy. Something's different. And he sees this kid, literally his hands are dusty and he's tired, like exhausted, And the kid, but honorably, he throws the coins in the hand of the father, and the father gets the coins, and he's like, you didn't make this, And he's about to throw it in the fire. The kid literally as if he saw a cobra, and the memory gave him access to the reflex, like a cobra. Literally, he grabs the father's hand and he's like, "Don't." Then the father says, "I know. Now you've worked. Now you can chill and do whatever. Now you understand. You have the experiential understanding of the value of it. So now you can do whatever. So that was kind of like the story. Yeah, guys, this story is like, who knew? Bedtime stories of my childhood would become podcast content one day. So, back to the topic. Pretty much all of that was to kind of show the rage of the deserving. See it like the kid's hand holding the hand of the father, right? Now think of that relationship as a member of civilization and the civilization itself. Right now, the civilization is not acting like the honorable father inspiring the child, but the child now has to act as if the father could be that. Do you see? Because family you can't change. You live with the potential of how good they are. You know? So you have to you give yourself spacing to adjust. Sometimes, I mean, it depends. With your true friends, you don't have to really. You could be when you're with a trusted community. You can be comfortable being animate as a person. But when the person's in a certain strict situations, in certain contexts, you can't be as free. You can, but it's like it depends on the intention of the outcome. You think the thing is, so you think in the chat section says, however, his body probably won't benefit from a job in the kitchen. Let me tell you, no, no, no. There's something cool about work. Literally working with a conscious, like with a velocity, with a direction and speed, that it doesn't make you hungry. Literally, the importance of the work is an energetic restoration. Like when something, because here's the thing, if there's something for me that I don't want to do, the only way I can do it very easily and efficiently is if I make it important. Do you know? And when I make that important for myself, then a new level of energy, like a new avalanche of an effort goes towards the phenomenon. So I'm telling you, when you work, you're not thinking about food. Food is like your victory celebration. You know, for that entrepreneur working in the office, eating noodles, in Silicon Valley, every progress of the business, it's like the noodle is just the silent celebrations before the public ones. I know. I just wanted to use your comment as an opportunity to say that work can actually be the best thing to health. Now imagine we created systems where the person's work, the person's physical workout, and all of it was implemented. Honestly, I feel in the future, corporate spaces, maybe like Google, people are going to have like these anti-gravity rooms, maybe, or maybe some sort of jetpacks or cyberspace. I mean, that would be insane, where every person can enter, like, imagine a cubicle office, and every person enters with goggles. Each goggle makes everything in the office seem like a Victorian palace or anything. So literally, we will be able to have goggles that change the corporate space. That means you could live in just an empty house, but there could be technology that completely makes that empty house look like a palace. A sort of digital holographic layering upon the walls of the house, where just by a mere click you change the wallpaper. you know There was something like this in this Japanese anime. For it wasn't like the way I'm saying, where it was wearing a goggles. Like imagine someone going to their workplace wearing these goggles, and they're suddenly like in whatever kind of world they want to be. Like the cubicles could look like clouds, you know, and the person could work. I think right now the notion of the guardian angel in the future is going to be man's first intimate relationship with AI. We're gonna guard AI from destruction. We're gonna live honestly for it, and then AI is gonna live honestly back. It's like what we input in the system is we get out. So that means, like, if you had this goggle, you wouldn't need to buy a mansion. You could be walking in the street, and in your inner realms, the whole street could have like this game, like a game engine that keeps generating worlds. You could literally walk in the streets and see them with the architecture of the Renaissance. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't exist on that kind of a mainstream commercial level. Where I mean, how many people do you see wearing virtual reality goggles at your workplace? Hmm. We have to advance at least towards a new ethos, towards a new story. I think people are getting tired of being meaningless objects in the void. That we have to utilize the opportunity, and it's not something of a strict organized this way. Like it's not like military war. It's more like discourse. It's like the wilderness of minds. That means the concrete jungle was made for our minds to go wild, so we have to technically create another jungle. And let's call it that it's going to be the cyberspace jungle after the concrete jungle, the digital jungle. And honestly, I don't know. Human beings, everybody has such a unique, different DNA. On like we're all different neurons in one humanity's brain. You know what I mean? Like I think the best way, inevitably, to design civilization would be like a brain. I feel if we could find a way to connect all branches of academia to the biological human body, that if the child just studied the medical sciences, they would have enough biological metaphoric, the biology could act as a metaphor for all the philosophies and political systems and everything that's there. Do you know? Like, for example, we could say in academia, rather than it's like a tree that has branches, there's the studying of the heart of humanity. It's all the humanities. You can say that anything that had to do with love and the unknown to some degree. You know? I honestly feel it's going to be divided between known studies and unknown studies. And here's the thing, unless the person sees the value of an excellent outcome, they won't care for it. That means, honestly, there is like something of self excellence that is a fuel for the individual to do something for the collective, you know? And honestly, if we think about it, I mean, like some people criticize Mother Teresa. I don't know why I'm bringing Mother Teresa into this, but some people criticize Mother Teresa that she was like this incredibly compassionate person, a religious person, but she also was against, for example, like trying to control and preserve reproduction and overpopulation. You know, she was against like plastic intervention, you know? And so it was this situation where she was this compassionate human being, where there's even stories of her where three people came to her, and she ordered a cup of water from the tap, but the people there ordered bottled plastic bottles of water, you know? And Mother Teresa was like, "You three get out of here." That means if you three are willing to spend this much for water, that means you don't care to give anything to the people. Like, she was that kind of altruistic. But here's the thing, if we develop sky cities and utilize three-dimensional space, overpopulation wouldn't have been a problem. Overpopulation is a problem because we feel we can't control the effect. But if we build sky cities and we access three-dimensional space, we have as much room as we want. Look at how big the sky is. You know, and that's the evolution of cities anyways. You know, advanced communicators are like a legion of winged minds. Human beings that have realized that the mind is, it's like now we're living like minds moving bodies, not just bodies moving mind. This is why just when there is a physical interaction only, it's just a bit lifeless. The life is coming from the watcher of the physicality. So Billy says, "Oh yeah, that'd be awesome if you could feel like your basement turns into a swimming pool." Let me tell you, it would be like your basement can turn into an aquarium, and you can see giant fish just hovering, and everything could seem like water, but it's a cyberspace illusion. So you could literally experience, like, you could literally be someone. If it was me and I had that technology, I'd probably create a cyberspace outline where it's as if walking in my house feels like I'm walking underneath water, and light beams are coming from underneath the water, from above to the underneath, you know? But of course, cyberspace, that's far ahead, you know? That's something that's probably going to become a desire, maybe, I don't know, 70 years from now. People are going to desire something like that. First thing I think has to come is anti-gravity technologies for the bed. I'm telling you, beds are unnatural. We should be sleeping, hovering in air, so there's nothing sculpting our body as a pressure point of gravity acting on that object. You know, some billionaire go and make anti-gravity beds. Come on, you can do this. What do we deserve as a species? Ask yourself this. What do you think your species deserves? This question is so profound that it just gets away from all the inner realm obsessions. Literally, it's as if it's like a question that is like such a unknown colossal event. It's like there has been a light that has never gone out. Communication is the greatest advantage. You know, guys, I'm gonna read for you a poem, and people can choose. I'm gonna go into a poetry tunnel. and it's this book I wrote called Rahmana. Okay, sorry guys, needed a quick intermission there. I've decided to read this other poetry book, which is much easier in regards to pinpointing it. Actually, no, I'll read Rahman, whatever. So, people can choose a poem out of 1 to 48. I'm going to read the first one. When heaven returns. How does the pond throw stones into itself? Let's ask man, he might know better. N-O, I've written it here. Let's ask man, he might know better. We are all the reflections of the divine in our own eyes. How does madness wear a jumpsuit? It is always up to you to dive into a new sky, for what is within you is always beyond you. So as you think in the chat section says, last but not least. Some coins didn't like the pocket destiny's hands had thrown them into. All day long their task kept breaking the mask of illusion through sincere knowing. All day their task kept breaking the mask of illusion through sincere knowing. If wonders spun around the center of the knowing of man, how does life dance? For some starving mystics, the universe has always been a belly dancer's performance. Stunning is the wind that travels direct from, oh my god. Stunning is the wind that travels to direct form formlessly. Of all beings, trust in your ally, and above all, your sincere search. Sleep, wild one. All await to listen to your newfound voices. That means I think like anybody listening probably has something to do with trying to like advance the communication of the civilization, you know. The more advanced communicators we have in civilization, the more advanced ways we're communicating the world and seeing the world, the more potential there is for the world to become advanced. Oh, sorry, there's more. There's more to the poem. Sleep, wild one, all await to listen to your newfound voices. Divinity is a light that never gets dim. All romance is a beautiful entrance to be before anything can be done. When you consider last but not least, you are the chosen one. When you consider last but not least, you are the chosen one. Yeah. My grandfather, who He was a businessman in his life at a very early age, like at the age of 12 he started working. And he told me that he would be the last one. He would listen to what everybody at meetings had to say, then he would speak. And I think that's the power of patience, that it gets to see more before it implements some sort of movement. It's kind of fascinating. We are watching our lives into meaning. All right, I'll read one more, guys, and I'll head to the Discord. This poem, guys, is a very unique one. I think I've never read this one before. It's called The Madness That Broke a Snowflake. Once a snowman and a tall rabbit had an argument. Who deserves the carrot of destiny? In the roar of a new season, neither the snowman remained or the rabbit got fed. All beings strive towards transcendental bliss. The honor of now is always an undying moment. For the madness that broke a snowflake into 7 heavens made no mistakes. Why are numbers so valuable, especially when aligned? Perhaps the truth of truth is a sincere goodbye. We are all here for a little while. Alright, this next poem, guys, is called Keep It Going for the Universe. As if imagine a giant round of applause. Every creature in the universe is clapping for the universe's performance. It's like, keep it going for the universe, you know? But the poem's just called Keep It Going for the Universe. You may wonder, just a second, guys. You may wonder, through the eyes of despair, why life has not brought romance in your divine comedy. Can a general be too general in front of his armies that want specific orders through the chaos? Is a question mark just a point and a curvy line? Reality whispers clarity in one moment that is too endless to be shaken by the belief of how others see self. Did you know that spirituality is your own exploration? We all develop through the wisdom of a view unborn. Did the breath of Christ bend the nail? All resurrection is divine, even though some men are too cruel to see. The rulers beyond measurement are not here to measure omniscience. All presents are gifted in presence. Do you know that you are God's talent to look in the mirror and see nothing through everything? How divine is control when the controller is in the hand of an idea? What makes temptation seek an inspiration of a mistress? What has allowed the novice to master the ignorance of self into absolute self-realization? Where does the fun of cosmic display come from? Is there a divine comedy at work? Let the soul feel at last the soul of souls that is a wordless world in all that turns in the world of forms. So the last part of it is like, let the soul feel at last, the soul of souls, let your intelligence feel its overall context. That is, the whole moment is wordless. Words are given to parts of the moment, to phenomena in the content of the moment, specific content of the moment, right? So it's like, let yourself experience your greater being that is not based on the linguistic realm. In all that turns in the world of forms. That means introduce yourself to how you are the knower. You are the field of activity of the knower. You are the field. That's the point of it, you know? A wordless world in all that turns in the world of forms. When you realize there's bigger events, that's the cool thing about honor. Honor is not just a one honor thing. It's like, I have honor, it's like that. It's not. It's like honor. I would say it's levels. It's what you are in the presence of, what you're walking with. Do you know? That means it's like, it's literally, there is levels, there is a hierarchy. Without honor, there isn't that sort of discretion to abide by laws that work. You know? I honestly feel, for the sake of our psychology, we have to divide our civilization into concentric spheres. And there is, we can say, the biological sphere, which is the individual biological life of the being, and their proximity and their space. And then we can say there's the social sphere, the sphere of society, then the sphere of whatever kind of spheres there are in society. Because that's the thing, when a person speaks to another, imagine person A and person B are in a park and they're talking. Now, person A says something, person B, it's as if like what person A said went from one ear and left out of the other ear. So what it is like, person. Here's the thing: when someone's in their inner realms, they are inside the sphere. When someone, or those who have cared about the Pure Lands, they are hovering outside of the sphere. It's also a very metaphysical kind of esoteric notion, not the costume games of modern esotericism. But I'm saying in ancient times there was a different kind of way that the walk was done. You know, this realm was piloted differently. Now it's being piloted with God knows something that only God knows. It's like really, like, it's like, what do you want from the unknown? But really, the esoteric idea, I would say, let me just be even more respectful and say, more discreet, and say a metaphysical idea that the soul is not meant to be inside the body. That means those circles, those ancient traditions that identified with the notion of this invisible viewer, they called the soul. Do you know? This invisible viewer was it was the eternal life that only the temporal life could notice. So that means it's like being outside of the sphere. The person is moving their body as the whole moment, not as inside the body and they're part of a moment. This is possible. That's pretty much, you see athletes get in the zone. You see that rock star on stage get in the zone. You know, you see that artist go suddenly in that crazy rhythm, or that dancer go all out. You see, all of those are moments where they're not actually an individual. The person has become the whole event. So the whole event is timeless. This is why when you have fun, you know, time flies. It's not that time. I mean, you could technically say time flies away. But, you know, that means your attention is so on the event, experiential event in the moment, that there is no need for the ideological counterpart, you know. One last poem and I'll end this. The love of two doors. As close as you are to the me in you, how fast can a species realize the collectivity of truth? Do not give thought a place to occupy in the mind of abstraction. This, of course, does not mean fight the unknown with limited knowledge. Do not forget, the writer of this poem is a mystic before he's a poet. Can your senses be dancing in mystery? How does the heart of the past weep for a future that has forgotten where it came from? When the imagination becomes a wild horse, what need do you find to tame what is beyond you? The myth of this world is that it was empty, now it's full. The next myth will be how emptiness and fullness are one moment. But my dear reader, do not forget, the poet of this poem is fighting off language every day. The last myth is also the first truth of a new world of allowance. Let the divine take care of you through all that you can be. We are all poets, hiding our divine. We are, we're all poets, hiding our divine nature in plain sight. When your fingers move the pen faster than your mind, you have become the only creation that was its own creator. Isn't existence self-evident? For how long must this body be held through the cycles of time and space? Is meditation a practice of an awareness? The women of this world must guide all men into their true nature that is beyond the forms of mankind. The feminine is the entrance to the masculine. The masculine is the exit to the feminine. These words are very carefully written by the cosmos. For the love of two doors is a moment with an absolute glow. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Let us no longer bother the simultaneous allowance of existence. That is the awakening to the multidimensional context of an advanced civilization. Okay, guys, this next poem, I don't know why, I just feel like reading one more. So this next poem from Rahmana is called Airplane Food of the Gods. Once a poet. Once a poet looked through an airplane window and saw his pen move. Love at first sight means sight was here first. What are you noticing about the tilt of a world that spins in the middle of nowhere? When the pilot flies all the gods through a new plane of existence, did eternity have a temporal cost? Never forget you are the divine in your eyes. I'll read one more. Heart of a sleepless child. There is no such thing as sickness. Do not believe in bullshit. Okay, alright guys, I can get through this. Heart of a sleepless child is the name of the poem. There is no such thing as sickness. Do not believe in bullshit even when the bull does not. Can the tyranny of a little person lead to the heights of a throne beyond the game? What makes a crystal relevant to the color beneath it? Love knows no bounds. Know this and you will be boundless like the universe within. What gives the free a heart that beats beyond words? How the divine works is that it works beyond measure. For where do you think the measurement came from? Wow, it ends. How the divine works is that it works beyond measure. For where do you think the measurement came from? There is this story, I don't know how authenticated it is, but it's ascribed, at least through certain circles of discussion, to René Descartes, where he was in his like late 20s in a barracks, and at the middle of night, he is visited by some dream angel, and the dream angel tells him that the next quest of nature is through number, number and measurement, something like that. So it becomes something where it's like there was even an inspiration to find the next language. I think the great continental philosophers of the world, they all noticed that they need to have a relationship with the language of the civilization in order to see how the civilization is functioning. Upon noticing the one way something is happening, if you see another way it can happen, you must implement, you know? So, it's all of knowledge is pretty much how attention is moving from known states to unknown states. And unknown states are pretty much where the unknown variables are more than the known variables. When the unknown variables are more than 50%, usually people distrust. This is why mysticism wasn't for the faint of heart. Usually when a situation becomes unknown, the normal kind of like mainstream archetype distrusts it. But for the mystics, they had a strange thing where they had seen the known. And they were like, I have seen this. What else? And the cosmos was for the first time shocked. Do you know? And so there has been many mystics, even way before I was born, many advanced pilots. One of the most epic pilots on this planet was Rishi Vyasa. You know? He literally piloted a lot of stuff from his inner realms into the outer realms. Every human being is doing that, of course. But the dude wrote books on leaves back in the day. Books that have remained somehow till today. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. Imagine writing a book on a leaf and you're like, okay, let's hope the wind doesn't blow this away into non-existence, If we care for something more, then we will live towards it, That's the whole thing. I think any human being who gets a piece of paper for a second treats as if they're on an island in the middle of a universal sector, and they suddenly get that piece of paper and truly ask themselves, what is important to me? Do you know? And you honestly don't have any sort of opinion. You just want to see what you feel as a human being. Do you know? And I'm telling you, anything that is important for you and you do it, you get simultaneously energized. And we have to be very conscious of human nature. A last story to share here. The scorpion, there was a scorpion and a frog, and they were friends. They were cool friends, you know what I mean? Not enemies. They were friends, even though they had different natures. And what happens is the frog comes up to a scorpion buddy and he's like, yeah, man, I'm going, you know, I'm relocating to another, there's more opportunities, on the other side of the pond, I'm going to relocate, there's a dream on the other side of this pond. And the scorpion is like, hey, man, don't leave me here. That's messed up. Like, what is this? I thought we were family. A scorpion is telling frog, I thought we were family, man. What the fuck? And the frog says, hey, man, this is life. Like, I gotta go. I'm a frog. You're a scorpion. Like, you gotta understand this. It's basic. And so what happens is the frog wants to go, and the scorpion in the story, in this ancient story, says, please come. And the scorpion and frog says, listen, man, if I carried you on my back, like, well, if we were to going over logistics, if you stung me, we would both die. So it's even safer for you to not even go on this journey so you don't die. If you accidentally sting me. And the scorpion's like loneliness is too much to bear. And he's like, no, please, this is the only way, don't leave me here, something. And out of compassion, the frog is like, all right, man, so you promise not to sting? And the scorpion's like, I promise. Remember, this story is a bit archaic, so its moral is archaic too. And so what happens is, as the frog is swimming with with his scorpion friend on his back, what happens is that the frog almost has gotten to the shore, 2/3 of the way. Do you know? And let's say in that moment, the scorpion stings. The frog who's swimming, he's like, holy shit, we're almost there. This nightmare's almost over. Suddenly the frog feels a sting. And he just turns around to the scorpion like, what the fuck? And he looks at the scorpion with eyes like as if like the Titanic ship is sinking. And he's like, how could you? How could you be this careless of life? And the scorpion is broken, shattered. The scorpion's like, it's my nature. I couldn't stop it. I'm a scorpion. I'm designed to like have the sting thing move every, I don't know, 30 minutes or something. Like, and it becomes this sort of situation where, of course, just for this chance that there could be like, younger people listening to this, technically the scorpion wasn't poisonous and the sting wasn't too bad, and the frog and the scorpion were close enough to land and they got out. So it was all good. But in that moment, there was a life lesson learned. If you have more of a, you have more guts, you can see the other side of the story. But pretty much the whole point of it was that people have their natures. And this means that not everybody should suddenly be with everybody. People have different natures, different ways they value the moment to even align. And if that person is not conscious of the outside, then it becomes dangerous. Literally, that's how domestic violence happens. It's literally like, one of the couples who's like beating the shit out of the other couple is as literally, it's as if he's in a virtual reality game that he feels numb to the other person's emotion. Literally, they're like in a video game. It's chaotic. It's like a box is on their head. Imagine, like, you go and somebody calls and says there's this domestic issue. The person goes and everybody comes. The authorities come and they're like, holy shit, this guy has a box on his head and he's beating the shit out of everybody blindlessly. That's the domestic violence we see. But that box is the inner realms person, where the person has allowed themselves to be human but not others. Then that kind of psychology has ignorance in it. Do you know? Guys, I think I honestly suggested the ending of the talk too quick. Like Guys, before I end off, I want to read this poem from Khalil Gibran, and it's on children. Pretty much any person who's a parent or even a child. Everybody's a child, but I'm saying like, child of someone. But I'm saying like, all right. Khalil Gibran says, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. Pretty much parents should be like bows, and arrows, their children are literally like arrows. Do you know what I mean? And after a point, the bow becomes society and civilization, and the greater levels and extremeness of life. Can you imagine back in the day, like the child, imagine like the Roman Empire, the child would have to go become a soldier. You know what I mean? Literally, they would remember the gracefulness of life, and they would go on to more intense work. So if we care for an advanced civilization, it will come about. The things we deem important live longer. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And I'll be in the Patreon Discord community. Much blessings, guys. Thanks for listening.